What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Thursday, March 6th, 2025, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now, it is 1500 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in this afternoon from Europe. So it looks like Trump is getting ready to pull out of NATO. NBC is reporting that the U.S. is considering a NATO policy change where it would only defend members that allocate a set percentage of their GDP to defense. Trump recently suggested NATO countries should contribute at least 5% of their GDP to defense. So, guys, I think there's only one or two countries in Europe that are at 5% of GDP on defense spending. Poland is one of them, and I think maybe Estonia is another one. So basically, any country in Europe that's not spending 5% of GDP on defense, the U.S. will not defend them if they get attacked by Russia. This is essentially Trump pulling out of NATO. This is absolutely huge news, okay? And right now, this afternoon, we have U.S. nuclear forces on high alert again. We have two B-52 nuclear bombers airborne, one over Louisiana, one over Oklahoma. We have a nuclear war command and control plane up in the air over Kansas. And we have some very interesting activity here off the coast of Florida. We have two sub-hunters here, but one of them is flying east to west, just north of the Bahamas. So there must be some kind of a sub in this area, or maybe they're looking for drug smugglers and things like that. Very interesting. And last night we had two U.S. B-52 nuclear bombers fly into the Baltic Sea, and then they turned their trackers off just as they were heading northeast towards the Gulf of Finland and into Finland. Here's one of those B-52s. You can see it made a little loop here, and then this was its last location before it shut its transponder off. And there were also two NATO aerial refuelers here in Estonia at the same time. Here you can see the other B-52. It was looping for about an hour or two in the Baltic Sea between Sweden and Estonia. But here are the two B-52s, and they both turned their trackers off right as they entered the Gulf of Finland. So this is huge news. We also had a French Mirage 2000 nuclear-capable fighter jet do a big loop around Kaliningrad, and it was patrolling northern Poland, and this came just a day after Emmanuel Macron gave his speech where he said that he would extend France's nuclear umbrella to all EU countries. Okay, so things are escalating. Guys, World War III is inevitable. Okay, if you're a Christian and you believe in the Bible says that World War III has to happen in order for Jesus Christ to return. Okay, the Antichrist has to come on the scene. The false prophet has to come on the scene. There has to be pestilence. There has to be famine. There has to be war. Okay, it's all in the Bible. Nothing can be done to reverse that. There's not going to be any miraculous peace deal in Ukraine or in the Middle East or in Asia. Okay, and if there is a miraculous peace deal, then you need to really be on high alert, because then we know it could potentially be a biblical peace treaty that gets broken by the Antichrist, okay? And here we have a bunch of reconnaissance planes in the Baltics and southern Finland last night. We had as many as 6 reconnaissance planes in the Baltics and southern Finland. I've never seen anything like this before, and I've been watching this area of the world for the last 4 years, every single day, tracking flights, and I've never seen this much reconnaissance in the Baltics. We had a British recon plane in Estonia. We had a private recon plane in Estonia and Latvia. We had a NATO AWACS plane in Latvia. We had a Swedish recon plane in southern Finland. We had a U.S. recon plane in southern Finland. And we had also a private recon plane in northern Poland. I mean, this is just totally insane. So something is brewing in the Baltics. And Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, said this morning that Emmanuel Macron's nuclear rhetoric is a threat to Russia, and that Russia will not allow European peacekeeping troops in Ukraine. He said EU armies in Ukraine means war. Okay, so he's basically saying that if any European armies go into Ukraine, they're going to be considered as part of the conflict, and then Russia would then strike Europe. Okay, we know that Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron are considering sending up to 30,000 troops to Ukraine, and they would be stationed in important cities and infrastructure locations deep behind the front line. So they would not be on the front line. They would just be protecting, let's say, the capital power plants, so Russia doesn't take another nuclear power plant. They would be stationed in critical areas, and then they would also be supporting the frontline troops in various ways, okay? But the UK and France have already talked about sending 30,000 troops, and now Turkey is apparently ready to send soldiers to Ukraine if needed. A source in the country's defense ministry told AFP. Okay, so now Turkey's considering it. So guys, get prepared. Okay, Russia clearly stating they will not allow European peacekeeping troops in Ukraine, stating that Macron's nuclear rhetoric is a threat to Russia. Okay, so Russia's basically pushing everybody around. They're dictating the terms of the peace deal with Ukraine. Okay, Trump is basically trying to get Ukraine to unilaterally surrender their land. He's already cut off the intelligence sharing, okay? And Russia's not making any concessions at all, okay? Russia's continuing their maximalist demands. They want no peacekeeping forces, okay? They want Ukraine to surrender their land. So Russia is not backing down from any of their positions. They want to force the U.S. and Europe to make concessions for the sake of peace, okay? So basically Putin is dictating the terms of the peace deal, not Trump, all right? And we know that Trump is now going to be using Putin as a mediator with Iran to make some kind of an Iran nuclear deal, which is interesting because during the campaign, Trump said that he would support strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, and now he's talking about negotiating an Iran nuclear deal using Putin as a mediator. And what's interesting is Trump said the other day that he's working on a bigger and better minerals deal with Ukraine. So I wonder if Trump is going to try to make some kind of a deal with Putin that would include both Ukraine and Iran. Okay, but if Trump negotiates an Iran nuclear deal with Russia, that would be a big stab in the back to Israel, even though Trump is showing his support for Israel by claiming that he's going to strike Hamas and sounding tough on Hamas, but he's going behind Israel's back and negotiating a nuclear deal with Putin. And I want to remind you guys that Russia has already provided nuclear weapons scientists to Iran. Okay, Russia is supporting Iran's nuclear program. And I want to just read to you what Emmanuel Macron said yesterday in his speech to the French people, in case you missed it. He said, regardless of how soon peace comes, we need to recognize the Russian threat and arm ourselves more strongly. The future of Europe cannot be determined in Moscow or in Washington. Against this backdrop, who can believe that today's Russia will stop at Ukraine? Russia has long been a threat to France and Europe. Peace can no longer be guaranteed on our own continent. The Russian threat exists, and it affects the countries of Europe. It affects us, okay? So Macron is going to extend his nuclear umbrella across Europe. Russia doesn't like that. Trump is trying to pull out of NATO. Okay, so basically he's not going to support any NATO country if they get attacked because none of them are meeting the 5% requirement, except Poland maybe. Okay, and even Poland is at like 4.85%. They're not actually at 5%. So this is basically Trump pulling out of NATO. Absolutely insane. This is going to cause a war. It's going to cause Russia to invade and attack Europe. And Zelensky hinted at the possibility of Ukraine developing its own nuclear weapons. He said earlier today, in our country, everything is decided by the people. If Ukrainians want the return of nuclear status, then we will start working in this direction. And several key U.S. allies, including Israel, Saudi Arabia, and members of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, are reevaluating their intelligence sharing protocols with Washington. This reevaluation comes in light of concerns over Trump's apparent warming of relations with Russia. These nations are worried about the potential risk of sensitive information being compromised or shared with Moscow, which could undermine their security operations. Okay, so wow, Israel and Saudi Arabia are now no longer sharing intelligence with Washington because they're afraid that their operations could be compromised because of Trump's warming relations with Russia. And the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said on Thursday that Europe will expand its military capabilities more quickly, cleverly, and effectively than Russia. And I want to remind you guys that today was the big meeting in Brussels. They're going to be funding $1 trillion for Europe's defense. $1 trillion for an emergency defense fund, guys. If that's not a sign that Europe's preparing for war, I don't know what is, okay? $1 trillion in emergency defense spending. Emergency defense spending, okay? And remember a couple months back and all of last year, a lot of the Baltic countries, actually all the Baltic countries, a lot of the Eastern European countries, including Poland, the Scandinavian countries, were passing out pamphlets to their citizens on what to do if there's a war in Europe, what to do if they get invaded, what to do if they get attacked by missiles and nukes. Okay, so guys, it's coming. It's irreversible, guys, okay? It's in the Bible. There's nothing we can do to stop all this, okay? War is inevitable. And Canada is willing to reduce its retaliation to U.S. tariffs if the Trump administration drops some of the tariffs it has imposed, the Canadian government source said on Wednesday. And South Korea announced that during a joint exercise yesterday with the U.S. Air Force, a South Korean F-16 multi-role fighter accidentally dropped at least 8 Mk-82 500-pound bombs on the town of Dongmyeon, 35 kilometers from the North Korean border. And France is offering intelligence to Ukraine, the French defense minister said after the U.S. canceled all intelligence sharing with Ukraine on Monday. And 4 senior members of Trump's team held secret discussions with Zelensky's top opponents, including Petro Poroshenko and Yulia Tymoshenko. So it looks like Trump is going to try to overthrow the Zelensky government. And Russian drones struck energy infrastructure in Ukraine's southern region of Odessa yesterday during a massive overnight attack. 2 people were injured in the attack, which targeted civilian and energy infrastructure. And last night, Russia launched 112 Iranian drones at Ukraine. 68 were shot down. And this is where that intelligence from the U.S. can literally save civilian lives. Okay, the satellite information and all the various reconnaissance platforms the U.S. has can help Ukraine to protect their people. And soldiers from the U.S. Army's 2nd Stryker Brigade Combat Team, 4th Infantry Division stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado, are preparing for deployment to the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, guys, I want to remind you that the 2nd Stryker Brigade and 4th Infantry Division was deployed to Poland for many years as part of the rotational deterrence forces in Poland. Okay, they're basically equipped for a full-scale war. Okay, why you would be sending this to the Mexican border for any other reason than to invade Mexico and to create a buffer zone in front of the border, I have no idea. You don't need a Stryker Brigade combat team to deal with some illegal aliens. And the Wall Street Journal reports that the Trump administration has ordered the Department of Defense to halt the use of the U.S. military and military aircraft for the deportation of illegal immigrants to Guantanamo Bay because apparently the flights were too expensive and inefficient. The final deportation flight utilizing a U.S. military aircraft was carried out on March 1st, with roughly 30 flights having been conducted using C-17s and 12 using C-130s since January to several destinations, including but not limited to India, Guatemala, Ecuador, Peru, Honduras, Panama, and Guantanamo Bay. The flights to India were determined to have cost roughly $3 million each for the deportation of less than 100 migrants, while each of the flights to South America cost roughly $20,000 per migrant. And according to Bloomberg, the Italian government has begun to consider a number of alternatives to Elon Musk's Starlink, who they were expected to close a €1.5 billion deal with soon for use by the Italian military and government due to recent pullback by the U.S. of previous commitments made towards European security, likely to include issues related to Ukraine. Both Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and President Sergio Mattarella have expressed support for searching for an alternative to Starlink, claiming the search to be a result of changing geopolitics. And a leaked memo from the Department of Veterans Affairs Chief of Staff Christopher Cyrick, which was obtained by the Associated Press, stated that the Trump administration is planning to restructure the Veterans Affairs throughout 2025, cutting roughly 80,000 jobs and reducing the agency to the staffing levels it had prior to 2019. And several of U.S. President Trump's longtime allies in Europe have begun to criticize recent decisions and statements made by his administration, with Marine Le Pen, the leader of France's far-right National Rally political party, calling the U.S. decision to halt the transfer of military aid to Ukraine brutal, cruel, and reprehensible. While speaking yesterday to the French newspaper Le Figaro, while the leader of the Reform Party in the UK, Nigel Farage, condemned a recent statement by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance in which he appeared to insult the UK and France, calling them random countries that haven't fought a war in 30 or 40 years, after both countries publicly suggested that they would be willing to deploy a peacekeeping force to Ukraine, with Farage stating J.D. Vance is wrong. For 20 years in Afghanistan, pro rata, our size against America's, we spent the same amount of money, we put the same number of men and women in, and we suffered the same losses. Vance has since stated that he wasn't talking about the UK and France in this statement, despite both countries being among the only ones to publicly announce their support for a peacekeeping force in Ukraine only days before. Okay, so Nigel Farage and Marine Le Pen criticizing Trump and Vance for abandoning Ukraine and dissing the UK and French militaries. That is absolutely huge. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I will be back later on tonight, possibly with another update. Check out my 24/7 live stream. Download my free app in the Google Play Store. The link to my app is in the description below this video. Also, check me out on Telegram and Twitter. The links to my Telegram and Twitter are in the description as well. And I also have a Rumble page. And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere. And this update was sponsored by EMP Shield. Guys, EMP Shield has created a special discount just for you, the listeners of the NYPrepper channel. If you go to empshield.com and use the promo code NYPrepper, you can get 15% off your entire order. And why do you need an EMP Shield? Well, this is a special device to protect your vehicle, your RV, your solar generators, your radios from an electromagnetic pulse, which could be caused by a solar flare or potentially a rogue country like North Korea detonating an electromagnetic pulse weapon over the United States that's mounted onto a satellite. So protect your vehicles, protect your RV, protect your radios, protect your generators with an EMP shield. Use my promo code NYPrepper to get 15% off. Installation is super simple. This is a veteran-owned business, 100% American-made, and the EMP shields have been tested by the military, okay? And free shipping is included to the entire continental United States. And the link and the promo code are in the description below this video.